okay? And this is what's fulfilling you. And I think during this stage where we are more reflective and we have to think, what do I want? What gets me up in the morning? What am I enjoying? Whether it's connected directly to your business or not, that's what you need to find. And that's what we need to do for ourselves through this stage. And like yourself, you're out on your own, so you understand the stress that comes with that, trying to be everything to everyone.
Yeah. And the thing is, and as you were saying, Claire, you keep thinking, I should be doing this, and this. But the thing is, it's not that you're not doing it because you're sitting around drinking champagne all day, much as that would be nice. It's because you're doing all this other stuff that you're kind of forgetting, well, I've done all this. That's why I haven't done that. Do you know what I mean? And you can only do so much in a day. But your brain starts to, and especially I blame social media, because you just see all these, as where before we didn't have that room for comparison.
Oh my God.
And you're just constantly like, oh, look, I haven't done that. You're reaching for something else, but you're not looking at what you've done.
So your emotions signpost to your values, okay? So when you're doing the ruler skills and thinking through it and trying to understand why you show up the way you do and trying to regulate that, understanding, like your emotions are data about you, it's information about you. So taking time to reflect and going, why am I feeling this? Why is that coming up for me? When you go and look at what's coming up underneath, it gives you the answers. So deep down, that fear of failure is probably what's driving us, right? Well, I know what's driving me, okay? So I'll do anything to avoid the failure. And there's probably something there around that fear of, am I good enough? Okay. And that's where you're sort of wondering that procrastination piece might be kicking in for you, because it's now.
So because I have you here, and obviously, Sandra works with top end people. Just out of interest, do you find that even the most successful people still get this imposter syndrome, Sandra?
You'll be very surprised. It's the most intellectual, academically brilliant, most successful people that tend to have it.
Yeah.
The very people who wouldn't need to have it are the ones that have it. And that would be based on, their childhood story. And, I mean, I'll talk about myself here. The try harder child is in me, that need to achieve, that need to keep striving, okay? That works well because I have an internal ability to just motivate myself and get up and do, even when I don't want to, it's there. But I can recognise the slumps it can bring, the real downers when you just think, I can't keep doing this. You never let yourself off the treadmill. So I preach to everyone, we need to get out for walks, we need to do this, but do I put any of that into practice? Not when I'm sitting up to my eyes, developing training and delivering it online, because now it is online, it's not a 9 to 5. I could be delivering in America, Mexico, wherever, and I have to be on from 7 to 10 in the evening, so there's no cut off. But I have to be very mindful of that, and that's what you need to know, what your triggers are. You need to know what some of those self-limiting beliefs are and challenge that self-talk. So along with your power posing to get you out of that emotional hijack, you need to do the work emotionally around it as well. Okay.
So this is, for you to be like a business coach, it's really everything in life really comes back down to your emotions, like why we're doing something and what we're...
So let's even talk about, you brought up the whole worry and anxiety piece. If I think about me in my 20s, the whole worrying piece was always there before the pandemic and all, but I thought, do I want to be this person? I'm in my 20s, I've no house, I've no husband, I've no kids, why am I worried, okay, at this age? And then I thought, do I want to live my life having this? And I didn't, so I had to start looking at myself and doing a lot of personal development around that. I feel I've saved myself a fortune in therapy. I'm 25 years in this game, and that's the work I have to do in myself. It doesn't go away.
Okay, so you're saying in your 20s you were worried, so this is how you get into this with this work, is that what you're saying?
It's not necessarily how I got into it, but it's something I recognised in me that I wanted to change. See, a lot of people show up going, that's just who I am. Now, if you turn around, well, I'm just a worrier, that's who I am, and shrug your shoulders, what are you really doing there?
Compounding it.
Yeah.
But
I always say that.
it's learned
Reinforcing
helplessness.
story.
What you're saying is, there's
Learned
nothing I can do
helplessness.
to change this. But of course there is. You have a choice. You can change it. I can't change it for you. Nobody else can change it for you, but you can. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to do, and that's the work we have to do continuously. And I'm not saying I am not a worrier now, but I recognise the triggers. I know how I go, and I've been as up and down as everybody else during this pandemic. But what I do have is I recognise it in myself. I don't wallow in it. So the idea is feel the emotion. You're entitled to understand it. It's telling you something about you, your values, and think better. So feel it, but don't wallow in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, acknowledge it, but don't
Understand
wallow.
it, acknowledge it, understand it, label it, express it, talk to people about it, and then move yourself.
Yeah, what am I going to do to make it
Yes.
better? Hence why we introduced the Life Lounge. And something that I feel quite strongly about is I didn't ever want the Life Lounge to be somewhere where people go to have a whinge and a moan. There's plenty of other social media platforms that you can do that and have a whinge and a moan. It's not about wallowing, it's about acknowledging, yeah, it's a bit shitty, this is where we're at, but here's what we can do, which is basically...
So I said earlier, your emotions signpost to your values, right? So when you understand what values have been compromised, that's more self-awareness for you, okay? So if I'm in overwhelm and I think what values have been compromised there, it's this need to be excellent for me, it's this need to achieve, it's this need to be prepared, which all goes back to my try harder child, okay? Then I'm thinking they're being compromised because I can't give everything 100% if it's all coming at me at once. You know, if I'm juggling 6 projects, I'm not giving it all 6 projects the time. I don't have the time to give them what I would want to. So that puts me in overwhelm. So think about it. What your values do you think that's been compromised at the moment?
What are my... You touched on something there. It's like, you know, one of my therapists said to me, "You're a perfectionist, Ciara." And I went, "I'm not a perfectionist. You just got to look in the back of my car." You know, I was totally confused as to what the word perfectionist means. And when she explained to me, well, no, it's not about having a freaking, here she's, no, I'm not talking OCD.
Yeah.
Right? Which is what in my head I always... The story I told myself was a perfectionist is someone who's always sitting to perfection, houses to perfection, handbag, car, whatever. She's like, no, you're always striving for everything to be at a high level. So your work, your body, your family, your relationships, everything at a high level. So that, if I'm not, like, say, Ciara Daly makeup, high, has to be go, go. Or doing the Life Lounge, go. So then that's the compromise. So
that perfectionism that a lot of us have, and as you said, it doesn't come out in the way you might think perfectionism is. The extreme scale of the perfectionism is the procrastination. So the perfectionist will just keep on achieving. The mind won't let go even though the body's tired and the body, collapses on you, and that's when you stop. But then if you're always having to strive, which is where uncertainty puts us, sometimes we would almost want to know what the bad outcome is, because at least there's certainty with the bad outcome. Does that make sense? And you're not in that striving mode, because when you're in that striving mode, you keep your finger on the trigger of overwhelm in your emotional mind. So the procrastination you're feeling around, why am I not doing makeup tutorials online? Why am I not doing more around that? That's what it's to do with. You're feeling procrastination. Why would you get up in the morning to do that? So I'd like to address anxiety and worry more specifically that you brought up earlier, Cate. And if you think about it, we never stop worrying, okay? And some people obviously worry more so than others. But when does worry become a problem, do you think?
Whenever it sort of paralyzes you, emotionally and physically, where you're just kind of like, oh.
When it stops you leading the life you want. okay? So when we stay in that fear zone, what is happening is we're leading small lives in the fear zone, okay? We're limiting our possibilities and our opportunities. And that was one of the reasons, going back to when I said to you, I was a worrier, I wanted to deal with that because I wanted a big life. I wanted a full life. I wanted a life where I was traveling the world and seeing things, which I have done despite self-limiting beliefs. But that's what living in the fear zone does, and that's what worry does. So worry becomes a problem when it stops you leading the life you want. And there's two types of worry I just want to quickly explain. You've got real problem worry, or what you explained when you first started this conversation was the hypothetical worry, worrying about things that might not happen, the catastrophizing. So the real problem worry is, at this point in time, we're experiencing COVID, so let's do what we can, wash our hands, wear our masks, stay at home, okay, work from home. That's what we can do about a real problem that's happening now. But what's hypothetical worry? That's when you start to catastrophize around what?
Like I could catch,
What if I get it? Yeah.
or I could get knocked down on the road next week, like
Yeah.
worrying about something, just a hypothetical situation.
Exactly.
Oh,
So what if I catch COVID? What if my kids get it? What if I die from it? What's going to happen to my children? Okay, I'm doing a lot of work with carers who are looking after poorly partners, a lot of them with Alzheimer's at the minute, and the Alzheimer's has got worse over this lockdown period because nobody can get in or out to see them, and their thought is, I don't want to put them at home. What if I end up dying? Who's going to look after them? Okay, as if they haven't enough on their plate. They're engaging in hypothetical worry that is going to make them ill. Okay, that's keeping them in that catastrophizing zone. And actually, when you compromise, when you're in the emotional hijack with the cortisol, you've triggered your immune system, so the cortisol's flooding your system, you've got the adrenaline. When you keep worrying, hypothetical worry, that keeps you there. And what you're actually doing, which is very dangerous during a global pandemic, is compromising your immune system. So yeah, you are going to likely to catch something because you're right for it. Okay, so I want people to be able to recognize when they're in that space, and with hypothetical worry, park it. So I'm going to say something weird as a potential solution. So if you haven't tried it before, because the worst thing you can say to someone who's a worrier is just stop worrying. Because if it was that easy,
I hadn't thought of that.
if it was that easy, we'd all be doing it. But park your worry for a certain time of the day. When you see your mind going into that whole catastrophizing, say to yourself, well, I'm not going to stop worrying about it, but I'm not going to let that intrude on what I'm doing right this minute. I'll save that for 7 o'clock tonight, for example, and save like half an hour for the hypothetical worry. It's like, us try harder children with our tick boxes and our to-do lists, and we get them all done. Just add that, I'll fit that in think of a time during the day that suits you best. At the end of the day, it's probably the best time, and pick that time and do all your hypothetical worrying then. Because
So
that might
choose your
free up
thoughts.
your mind that might free up your mind to do what you need to get done in the day.
I think it's a skill that needs practice. Is choosing your thoughts, being aware what thoughts is there, and going, no, shut up. I'll think about you later at 7 o'clock, as you say. Right now, I'm thinking about this, and that's something that I have tried to practice.
Have you heard of that before? Have you tried to park the worry for a certain time and fit it all in then?
Yes, I have. Not the way you have put it, but just being aware and going, I choose not to think about that right now.
Exactly.
If
If you can change one thought or one belief about yourself, you will change a lot of your behaviour. It's as simple as that. Okay, so you need to know your thoughts. Your feelings are not directives. Do you know what I mean by that?
Okay.
So I mean, you don't need to act on them because they're passing. Your feelings are passing. Okay, they're not. You need to understand them. You need to know what's triggered them. You might want to explore what's going on for you, and it's always a pattern. It's always a behaviour. Okay, it's always a belief you have about yourself that's triggered it. And when you understand it, you can start to dial down that voice, okay, and dial up a belief that's going to serve you today. So if the perfectionists in us are, I have to do this and I have to do it right, or I won't do it at all, why not change that to something more empowering, like, well, I'm learning, I'm being creative, and that thought will allow you to do what you want to do, rather than go, I can't make mistakes, it has to be right. Because if you go around thinking, I can't make mistakes, are you going to do anything?
Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
Don't take any risks.
You won't take a risk.
No.
So you see how your thoughts can limit you? You need to recognise what your thoughts are and turn them around into more empowering ones.
Love that. So Sandra, whenever I first contacted you, the other fascinating bit about the fact that you told me about yourself was that you were one of the first Chinese people born here in the 60s.
Yes.
Tell us a little, just a wee anecdote about
A wee
that.
anecdote. Okay, well, I was born in the kitchen floor back in 1969 in Larne. I was one of 7 children, so I'm the middle child. I'm 4th child. I was the 4th daughter. And the boy, the longed for son, came after me, 10 months after me, actually.
Wow.
So we're like Irish twins. And then I think by that stage, my mother thought she was on a roll, had another one, the 6th child, another girl, and thought, no, I'll try once again, and had another boy. But she had 7 children. My mum had 7 children before she turned 30, all in her quest to get a boy. So if she had 2 boys right at the front, the rest of us wouldn't have existed. So yes, most of us, all of us were born in Northern Ireland back in the 60s and 70s and grew up then in Northern Ireland, and most of us have gone on to go into a lawyer, a psychologist, a counsellor, and myself, a coach. Consulting coach.
And tell me, like, as an ethnic minority, how was it growing up Northern Ireland in the 70s and 80s?
Well, yeah. Okay, so even now, ethnic minorities make up less than 2% of the Northern Ireland population.
Wow,
So you can
that's
imagine growing up in the
small
70s,
Wow.
right? In Northern Ireland, that there was a lot of, and I suppose this leads to my childhood story around some of the self-limiting beliefs I have about myself. We grew up, we stood out like sore thumbs. You would have had a lot of name calling, abuse, stones at windows, graffiti on walls. But what I have a very strong memory of is you know that fight or flight I talked about when you're triggered? I go into fight mode, okay? I go into defend. And no matter, there's mostly wee boys, I have memories of me having fellas in headlocks, fighting with them. Like, I'm not very big, I'm 5'2" at the most. Fighting wee lads, and I wore national health glasses and all from about the age of 9. And, you know, butter looked like a butter wouldn't melt in my mouth, but I go to defend and I go to fight. And then obviously as I went into my career, when I found taking criticism very hard, because that would have triggered my defense mechanism. And obviously going into fight or flight, going into fight for everything when you're pushing your agenda, that's not going to be influential. So that's another thing I've had to learn to dial down. I had to understand, why do I go to that defend mode? And that's all, and that's why I would show up with a bit of imposter syndrome myself around being a fraud. Am I good enough? Someone's going to catch me out. I'll be caught out one day, you know. That's triggered less and less as I get older, okay? A lot less the more years I'm in this business, but it still gets triggered. This very interview triggered it. I mean, I was laughing whenever you asked me to, but anything that's recorded or can be held against me, it's a judgment. I think it's that judgment that it triggers.
You're putting yourself out there for a bigger, wider, different audience. It's not just people there today and then, yeah.
Exactly, and I don't have to watch it back, and I don't care what they think. So I'll stand in front of a room full of strangers and do what I do. But then if I think a camera's on me and it's going to be recorded and it can be watched back and played back and chewed over, and that puts me in a place of overwhelm.
That makes sense.
So to do a bit of power posing myself before I came here.
Well, thank you for that. I think anybody that watches it will watch it and watch it back and chew over it and benefit from it.
Yeah.
hopefully.
rather than
I
criticism.
love all the emotional hijacking. There was a few corkers in there.
Okay.
I can't wait to
Yes.
watch it back.
Striving.
I'm taking notes.
Striving is definitely something I'm feeling, but it wasn't a word that I had attached to it. But I'm thinking that's it, and now I'll go away and read more about that.
Yes.
And before we say goodbye, what can you recommend? Maybe there was a book you mentioned,
Presence by Amy Cuddy.
Amy
So
Cuddy.
you type that in, Google that.
Spell the
Presence,
surname.
yes.
Sorry.
Cuddy.
Cuddy. Okay. And are there any others you'd like to sort of mention now that you think are useful for anybody? Me.
Look, if you
Asking
are
for
a
me.
starter on this whole personal development journey, the old one that's been there years but still very much counts today, especially around the circle of concern and what you can, the circle of influence, is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Sphere of influence.
Yes, your
Yes.
sphere of influence.
Actually, maybe I'll just get that. I have read that. I must get
And
that back.
Sandra, we didn't really introduce you properly at the start. So if people going, God, I'd love to see more of Sandra. Where can we find you? What I can't wait to do this course with you next week. So just
You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can go to my website, www.tl-solutions.co.uk.
TL. Okay. What's TL stand for?
Training and Learning
Okay.
Solutions.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Sandra.
ladies. It's been lovely. Thank you.